Have you ever felt the need to hide your pain just to fit into the world? As if wearing a mask was the only way to be accepted? Pause for a moment and think about it. How many times have you smiled at a family gathering, even though you felt
completely lost inside? Or perhaps you've automatically responded with "I'm fine" when someone asked how you were, even though the real answer was far from it. This feeling is more common than we think. Depression often doesn't appear as explicit sadness. It can come disguised as forced smiles, falsely positive attitudes, or even silence. But pretending to be okay can distance us even further from who we really are. Society values outward strength but ignores the emotional cost of maintaining that facade. How many times have you heard phrases like, "be strong" or "don't cry in front of others"? These messages teach us to suppress our emotions, creating a gap between our true essence and the world around us. And the worst part? The more we try to hide our pain, the more it grows inside us, invisible to others, but overwhelming for ourselves. Today, we're going to explore how the mask of depression works. Why does pretending to be happy not solve the problem? More importantly, how can removing this mask be the first step toward reconnecting with yourself and finding inner peace? Because deep down, true healing begins when we stop pretending and start being vulnerable. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. It's about creating space for our true essence to flourish, even when it feels scary. So take a deep breath now. This video is an invitation to look inward, to that part of you that may be tired of carrying the weight of this mask. By the end, I hope you walk away with practical tools and a new perspective on how to face this journey. The persona is the mask we wear to adapt to the world. It arises as a form of protection, a tool to help us navigate social expectations. However, this same mask can isolate us from our true essence. Imagine someone who always smiles in public, but hides their pain deeply within. This internal disconnection can lead to more suffering because we constantly feel divided between who we truly are and who we think we should be. Pretending to be happy might seem like a temporary solution, but in the long run, it distances us from ourselves and others. Wearing a mask is like placing a heavy stone on our shoulders. The longer we carry it, the harder it becomes to remove. And worse still, the more we wear this mask, the more we lose touch with our authentic emotions. Let's think of an everyday example. Imagine a young person working in a competitive corporate environment. They feel anxiety and exhaustion, but everyone around them expects them to exude confidence and success. To fit in, they start adopting the persona of the infallible professional. Over time, this persona becomes so ingrained in their identity that they can no longer access their own insecurities until they explode into an emotional crisis. Another example could be a mother who always presents herself as strong for her children. She avoids showing vulnerability to protect them, but internally she feels overwhelmed. This behavioral pattern can create a vicious cycle where she feels increasingly isolated, even while surrounded by people who love her. Who are you when no one is watching? And what happens when your mask falls? Take a deep breath now. Think of a recent situation where you used your social mask. What was that mask trying to protect? Perhaps it was fear of judgment, a desire for acceptance, or even the need to avoid conflict. Listen closely. Hiding our pain might seem safe, but in reality, it only increases the weight we carry inside. When we suppress our emotions, they don't disappear. They accumulate, creating an emotional burden that can lead to exhaustion and isolation. It's like trying to hold a ball underwater. The more force you use to keep it submerged, the more pressure it exerts to rise back to the surface. Understanding the psychological shadow is crucial. Neglected aspects of ourselves can sabotage us, manifesting as anxiety, depression, or even self-destructive behaviors. Carl Jung, one of the pioneers of analytical psychology, described the shadow as the part of us that we repress or deny. When we ignore our shadow, it becomes an invisible force controlling our actions and emotions. Let me share a fictional story to illustrate this. Maria was always known as the strong one among her friends. She was the person everyone turned to when they needed support. However, internally, Maria carried a deep pain she never shared with anyone. One day, after years of silence, she decided to drop her mask and seek therapeutic help. In doing so, she discovered that her strength wasn't in hiding her vulnerability, but in embracing it. This decision transformed not only her life, but also the way she related to others. Now, consider another scenario. Imagine a teenager who feels ashamed to admit they're struggling in school. They fear their parents will be disappointed, so they decide to hide their difficulties. Over time, this internal pressure can result in low self-esteem or even physical symptoms like headaches or insomnia. Hiding pain doesn't eliminate the problem, it amplifies it. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. What happens when you decide to stop hiding your pain and start facing it? Close your eyes for a moment. Visualize yourself removing an emotional barrier. How would it feel to connect without fear of judgment? Perhaps you imagine a sense of lightness, as if you're letting go of something that has weighed heavily on your shoulders for a long time. Listen closely. Vulnerability is often seen as weakness, but in reality, it's one of the bravest forms of authenticity. When we open up emotionally, we allow others to get closer to us. This creates space for deeper, more genuine relationships. Being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's courage. It's about telling the world, "This is me, and I'm ready to be seen." When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give others permission to do the same. This can transform superficial relationships into meaningful connections. Imagine a couple who has avoided discussing their issues for years. They maintain an appearance of harmony, but internally, both feel disconnected. One day, one of them decides to open their heart and share their deepest feelings. This act of vulnerability can become the turning point for rebuilding lost intimacy. Another example could be a friend who always avoided talking about their financial struggles. They feared being judged or seen as incompetent. However, by sharing their situation with a support group, they discover they're not alone and receive both practical and emotional help. Vulnerability can be liberating because it builds bridges between us and those willing to support us. What would happen if you allowed someone to see your real pain? Take a moment to think. Who in your life could be a safe space for you to share your truth? Maybe it's a close friend, a therapist, or even a journal where you can vent. Listen closely. Therapeutic writing is a powerful tool. Write a letter to yourself asking, "What do I really need to feel connected?" Writing is like illuminating a dark path. Each word reveals something that was hidden. Try writing about a recent situation where you felt the need to wear your mask. What was behind that choice? Perhaps it was fear of rejection or the need for control. Another technique is guided meditation. Visualize yourself in a safe space, surrounded by people you love. Imagine speaking openly with them about your feelings. This practice can help you access parts of yourself that are blocked by fear or shame. Try sharing something vulnerable with someone you trust. Even if you're alone, this act can bring freedom. Removing the mask is like opening the windows of a closed house. It lets the light in. When you decide to be more authentic, even in small actions, you're creating space for your true essence to flourish. If you could choose one small action today to be more authentic, what would it be? It could be something simple, like sharing an honest thought with a friend or admitting to yourself that you're tired. Take a deep breath now. Visualize yourself taking that action. How would it feel to be free of that burden? Listen closely. Being authentic means embracing both our strengths and vulnerabilities. It allows us to live more aligned with who we truly are. When we set aside the mask, we find freedom and inner peace. Rebuilding authenticity is a gradual process. It's not about changing who you are, but rediscovering parts of yourself that were forgotten or neglected. Think of someone who always avoided showing their sensitivity because they thought they'd be seen as weak. By embracing that trait, they might discover that their sensitivity is actually a source of strength and empathy. Being authentic is the first step toward finding inner peace. When we set aside the mask, we allow the world to see our true light. What part of you is ready to be seen today? Take a deep breath now. Visualize yourself showing the world a part of yourself that you're afraid to reveal. How would it feel to be free of that burden? Listen closely. Today, we explored how the social mask can distance us from ourselves and others, and how vulnerability can be a powerful force for creating authentic connections. We saw that small acts of authenticity can transform loneliness into communion. Remember, you don't have to carry the weight of the mask alone. Every time you open up, you allow the world to see your true light. The journey to remove the mask isn't easy, but it's liberating. It requires courage, patience, and compassion for yourself. If this video touched your heart, share your story in the comments. How have you been dealing with the feeling of needing to hide your pain? Together, we can inspire each other to find connection even in the most difficult moments, because in the end, the deepest connection we seek begins when we stop pretending and start being who we truly are.